Welcome to our special edition Friday Forum. I'm Dr. Krause from the Center for Graduate Life. We are very pleased to present Dr. Barbi Honeycutt from North Carolina State University. She's driven all the way from Raleigh to be with us today. Dr. Honeycutt wears many hats. She's an adjunct assistant professor at NC State in their Department of Leadership Policy and Adult and Higher Education. She's the founder of Flip It Consulting, which is a company that designs training and education programs, and the focus of Flip It is to involve the learner in the process, so that's something very much near and dear to our hearts. She's worked with students as well as professionals in education, government, and industry to help them create effective learning environments. But more directly related to today's presentation, Dr. Honeycutt is also the director of graduate teaching programs in the graduate school at NC State. And in this capacity, she has taught and mentored many graduate students to be effective classroom teachers, and she has guided them in their career paths in college and university teaching. Hence today's topic on teaching portfolios. She brings considerable experience and knowledge to us today, and she will share that with us as she presents information on the teaching portfolio, how to create one and use it to get a job. Let's welcome her from NC State to UNCC, Dr. Honeycutt.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so yes, I'm here to talk about teaching portfolios, and my very first slide for you is something you're likely to see. This is a group of 4 professionals. We're going to say those are young faculty. They are probably at a department. You might go do a job interview, and when you sit down for the committee and you face these 4 people, one of the things they might ask you is, tell us your teaching philosophy. What? A lot of people are thrown off by that question because they've never done a philosophy before. And the teaching philosophy is the most important thing in your entire portfolio, which is why I wanted to start with a slide to get you thinking about who am I as a teacher, what do I do in the classroom. When you develop a portfolio and you have all of this evidence and you have all of these resources, you will be able to answer this question and back it up and be very effective at hopefully getting the job. So I want you to think about that throughout the workshop. So today it is really about developing your teaching portfolio. I'm going to give you a 5-step process that you can use starting today. And if you would, you can type notes into your laptops, or you can use any of the worksheets in your packet that I've given you. But basically, the whole idea is to help you tell your story. And this is actually a very nice room for this type of workshop. I usually do very collaborative workshops, but a portfolio is your work, and it's very reflective, and it's very individual. So there's not a whole lot of discussion today that we're going to have. It's really you thinking about who you are as a teacher and where you want to go and how you tell your story. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about what a teaching portfolio is and what it is not. It's very important to know what it's not. We're going to talk about why it's important. We're going to explain the main concepts of a portfolio. So again, you can leave here and do it. We're going to generate ideas and materials today that you can brainstorm and think, oh, I already have some of these, or wow, I need to go create some of these. We're going to talk about the importance of your teaching philosophy, which I've mentioned, and finally you'll start to generate a few ideas for your philosophy. Now at NC State, I teach a separate workshop on the teaching philosophy, and I understand it's part of a course here at UNC Charlotte. So that's something, if you want more help from today, I recommend you definitely do that, and maybe even do some peer review sessions, things like that, to start to learn how to write a philosophy. Today we're just touching the surface. So here's my first question for you, which is, why do you think a teaching portfolio is important? I'm going to get some feedback from the audience. We'll see how this works.
I believe a teaching portfolio is important because it would showcase what you've done, as well as what you're capable of doing, and maybe the type of classes you want to structure or create if you have that opportunity.
Okay, good. I like the way you're thinking about not only capturing what you've done, but thinking strategically about, this is the kind of course I want to teach. And so you're looking at how you're going to plan that and how you can best tell your story. So not only what you've done, but where you want to go. Love how you're thinking about that. Okay, we're going to get one more question in the back.
It is important because it's a direct way that the employers are going to understand how you are going to approach teaching, what kind of teacher you are, and that's the most important information they need to really know.
Okay, excellent. So in the first case, we had you looking at yourself as a student, as a future faculty, as a colleague, as a peer who's going into a department. In this case, we're having the department's looking at you, or a potential employer is looking at you to say, are you a good candidate for this position, and how do you fit, how do you teach? Okay. So that's good. We're looking at from both perspectives. Absolutely. So we can look at the professional development piece personally. We can look at the potential for jobs. Excellent. That's why I want to start thinking about why it's important. So first of all, I want to talk about what is a teaching portfolio. Usually when people hear the word teaching portfolio, they have all these ideas of, oh, that's everything I've ever done in teaching. I'm going to throw it all into this portfolio. Some people think it's a 3-ring binder and they put everything into it. Some people think of a website. There's all kinds of models. But the best way I can tell you, here's 3 things that a teaching portfolio is not. Okay? It is not a container where you dump everything into it and say, here's my teaching portfolio. Okay? It is not a scrapbook. Okay? It looks more professional than that. It's very intentionally designed. It's very reflective. It is also not your whole life story. Every course you've taken from kindergarten to now, every undergraduate course, every graduate course, those things aren't in there. Your portfolio should be very selective. It should be reflective. It should also be an opportunity for you to critically engage with what you've done and where you want to go, where you want to be. You don't put everything in your portfolio. You really pick and choose. One way I like to have you think about a teaching portfolio is to treat it as a scholarly research project. And you're all graduate students and postdocs, so you know what research looks like. So if you can think about your portfolio in this way, you're going to have some kind of thesis, which is usually your teaching philosophy. You're going to have some kind of evidence that you're going to gather to show I'm an effective teacher. We're going to describe it and do some analysis with it. So you really have to, this is what I kicked off the workshop with, is tell your story throughout. And finally, there's going to be some kind of conclusion where you bring it all together and look to the future. So that's one way to think about what a portfolio can be. Okay? So today, as I said, we're going to look at 5 different steps to help you build your portfolio. We're going to start with the purpose of your portfolio, move into setting the context, talk about your philosophy a little bit. We'll spend most of our workshop in that area. Think about some evidence that you have now, and then look at a reflective summary, how you pull everything together. So these are our 5 components. So we're going to start with the first one. Believe it or not, there are different kinds of portfolios. Now, I just said it's not a scrapbook, it's not your whole life history, but there are 3 different kinds of portfolios for you to think about. And I want you, while I'm describing them, to think about which one you want to try to create, say, starting tomorrow. Okay? The first one is comprehensive. A comprehensive portfolio is a sample of everything you have taught, but it does not go in a lot of depth. Okay, so it's mostly breadth. So if you wanted to include everything you've taught at UNC Charlotte, from intro course, maybe you taught a junior level course, you can include all of that. That is fine. That's one type of portfolio. This portfolio would be good if if you've had a lot of experience and you want to show the breadth of experience. So if you've taught a lot, which we were talking earlier, that might be a good way to say, here's a sample of all the things I've done. Okay. The next one is called course-based. So let's suppose that you've only really taught one course while you were here at UNC Charlotte. But you taught that course your entire graduate career, or if you're a postdoc. This is a good way to capture and dig in deep to do the depth in a course. So you could feature your syllabus, feature your learning outcomes, show activities that you've done, show samples of student writing, samples of exams, and everything you do is wrapped around this course. That's perfectly acceptable. If you don't have a lot of experience teaching a wide variety of courses, I might recommend this one for you. Especially if you've built your own course, those of you who might have the chance to do that, this is a great thing to show off. It's like, here's where I started, here's where it ended up, here's what the students are doing. Okay. All right, and last but not least is something called theme-based. So suppose that you created a course around a theme such as writing, or such as service learning, or inquiry-guided learning, or active learning, maybe an extension and engagement course, an online or distance ed course, where you were bringing in, it's sort of wrapping your portfolio around that theme. So everything that you do relates to that mission, or that vision, or that theory, or that concept. Okay? So Jean, I know you work with writing across the curriculum, so you could do a portfolio based on, this is the writing goals that we have, here's the courses that I've done, here's how I wrap it all together to match my philosophy. You could do that. You can do any of these, you can do a little bit of a combination of these, but these are the ones you're looking for, and it would really depend. You know, if you're starting out early in your career, you're a graduate student, you're a postdoc, you're going for that first position, you might want to do a course-based portfolio if you've had the experience to develop one. But if you've taught a lot of things and you want to show that, you can definitely do so. Okay, so I know we have a question.
Thank you. with a theme base, does it have to be a pedagogical theme? Or, for instance, I teach across disciplines and I kind of have a human rights theme throughout all of my courses. Could it be based on that kind of subject theme?
Yes, it could. Great question. So it doesn't have to be based on a pedagogical strategy such as writing or speaking. It could be based on, you have the human rights piece to that, or maybe you teach everything with a slant towards gender issues, women's studies, anything like that. You could certainly do that. That would be a great package to show, especially if you're looking at campuses. I don't know how many of you are future faculty thinking about those kind of positions, but in industry and any of those positions, if you're going to land in a job like that and that's important to them, that's a great thing to show. Excellent. Great question. For today, I want you to think about, okay, this is our writing piece. You can write on a scrap sheet of paper or you can type it on your computer. But our 2 questions are, what is the purpose of your portfolio? So thinking about when you leave this workshop today, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get a job? Are you trying to reflect back on your teaching here at UNC Charlotte? Are you trying to just say, I'm just going to try to see what all I've done and put it in a portfolio and see what happens? What's your purpose? And then the second question is, what type of portfolio will work best for you? The theme-based, the comprehensive, course-based? Okay, so just by show of hands, who's thinking about a comprehensive type of portfolio? A few, okay. And what about a course-based? Oh, okay, good. And then anybody doing a theme? Oh, okay, excellent. All right, good. So we have quite a mix. Excellent. So feel free to share your ideas. That's excellent. All right, so next we're going to move into context. So once you have your purpose, this is why I'm doing a portfolio, and you would literally write that in your portfolio and say, the purpose of my portfolio is to get a job, to apply for positions, to reflect on my teaching, whatever that may be. And then you can literally explain to your reader that you're doing this as a course-based portfolio or a theme-based portfolio or a comprehensive portfolio. So you literally would say that to your reader to give them context. I probably read 150 to 200 portfolios every year for NC State, and every one is different. And I need to know immediately and quickly what's the purpose of this portfolio so that then I can look at it with that eye. So it's very important to remember. Okay, so let's look at context. So here's another exercise for you. Just continuing typing and writing. What do you teach or what have you taught? And here you might do a quick brainstorm and say, well, here's everything I've done. And then you might go back in and pick the courses, pick the workshops that you've taught that relate to your purpose. And then finally, which teaching experience fit best with your goal? So if your goal is, I'm going to pick on Jean just for a moment because I know what she is working on. If Jean were looking at applying for positions beyond UNC Charlotte and she wanted to really feature writing across the curriculum, then she's going to look at a theme-based portfolio about writing, but then she's going to think about, which teaching experience fit best with that. And maybe it's not everything she's done. Maybe she wants to grab one intro course, one junior, senior level capstone course, one graduate course to show the breadth. Maybe you want to focus on all undergrad, for example. What's your purpose? Okay, so take a few minutes and brainstorm these 2 questions. And if you have questions during this process, please feel free to ask.
When thinking about your context and what's going in your portfolio, I've done a lot of guest lecturing my professors have asked me to come in and teach a class or fill in if they're not available. Is that something you would include in your teaching portfolio?
Okay, excellent. So here we're talking about teaching experience that's not a formal course. So you were invited, and I would encourage you to call them invited lectures. So that's different than I just guest lectured. So if you have been invited to do those things, absolutely. You want to include those if you don't have a lot of teaching experience to pull from. And then you could even have a whole separate section in your portfolio that says invited lectures, and people can click there and see what you've done. And in your context, you could explain, you literally write the narrative that says the purpose of my portfolio is to get a job, I'm a graduate student, here's what I'm doing, and see a sample of invited lectures that I've done. Okay.
I'm currently a master's student in history, so I've only done TA positions. But as I move into my PhD program, now I'm trying to probably get a course of my own. So would it be a combination of the course-based and comprehensive to kind of show the courses that I've had experiences with and then the courses that I feel comfortable teaching as now a PhD student probably teaching undergrad history courses and how maybe a sample syllabus or something of how I would teach those courses? Or how do you suggest moving into that second level, like using a portfolio to sort of add to your resume in order to get that that TA-ship as a PhD student over somebody else?
Excellent. Great question. So this is going to come up in your teaching philosophy as well. Okay? So graduate students in the room, talking to you, when you apply for your first position, you do not want to be seen as a graduate student applying for their first position when you go in and talk to the committee. You want to be seen as a colleague. You want to be seen as a new faculty member. You want them to see you in that way, and that's a hard hat to take off because you're in graduate student mode. Postdocs, you are doing your research, you're establishing your credibility as a scholar. Your challenge is to show how you can teach because you might not have had that much opportunity to teach while you're doing a postdoc. So in this case, yes, I think you're looking at a combination. A couple of things could happen. You could start with what you've done, which is what we sort of began with, but then you could have a section on looking towards the future. Here's my goals. Here's what I want to do. I find that a lot of TAs have to teach a course based on the way their lead faculty member teaches that course. And for some TAs, that is a very hard place to be. I hear this at NC State a lot with biology. So we have to teach 9,000 students biology. So they literally, every TA has to teach it exactly the same way. It cannot waver, but they want to bring more creative things to the classroom, but they can't. So what I encourage them to do is to talk about how they've taught it, include the syllabus, give the description and the context to say, this is how my lead faculty member teaches it, here's how I had to do it at NC State. If I had the chance to do it on my own, this is what it would look like. And you can take that same approach. So if I had the chance to teach my own intro course, these are the things I would do. And it's sort of a hypothetical situation. Now, you would only be in that place when you're just starting out. Eventually, when you do teach your own course, that would go in your portfolio. Okay, does that make sense? Yes. Does that answer your question? That's a weird place to be as a graduate student, but you can definitely pull that off. Okay. So, the teaching philosophy, again, most important piece. And let me just say this about the philosophy. You may be asked to go on a job interview, or let me just back up. You may be asked to apply for a job. And are any of you looking for jobs now? Okay, a few. Okay. It's never too early to start doing that because an interesting thing will start to happen. You'll start to read job descriptions and you'll be like, oh, I didn't know I needed to include this, this, and this. It's not always a cover letter and a CV. 90% of the faculty jobs out there are looking for a teaching philosophy. It's required. Some of your research positions are also looking for a research philosophy. And those of you going into industry, government, nonprofit, I've actually seen job descriptions that ask for a professional philosophy or a philosophy on diversity. Okay, so there's lots of options out there. So today's job market is not just about having your CV or resume and your cover letter. They're always looking for that extra something. So a philosophy statement, we're going to talk about it in the context of teaching today, but I'm happy to send additional resources about research philosophies. But this is the most important part. Your search committee, your job call may not ask for your teaching portfolio. I don't think I've ever seen one that asks for the portfolio in the initial stages of applying. However, if you show up on the job interview and you say, they're like, well, have you ever taught our intro course before? What would you do in that? You're like, yes, I have. Here's my teaching portfolio. You can see an example of my syllabus and my exercises I would do. That is impressive. That will get you the job. Because you've thought about it, you're prepared, you can articulate it. Okay, so let's look at the philosophy, and this is where we're going to pull in a lot of our worksheets. So what is it? The teaching philosophy statement is, who am I as a teacher? What do you do? How are you reflecting on your teaching? What does your classroom look like? If I were to step into your classroom, what would be happening in that space? Make that come to life for me. My teaching philosophy, this lecturing to students this way, this is outside of my teaching philosophy right now. So I'm not in my comfort zone at all because I'm staying where the camera is. You're in a lecture format. I'm doing a lot of lecturing. My philosophy is based on engagement, reflective practice, and I always reveal my strategies to my students. So that's what my teaching philosophy is wrapped around. So if you were to step into my classroom, that's what you would see happening. It's a messy space. This would not be a good picture of what I do. I'm able to do this, but it's not what I do. So a teaching philosophy, it is required. You cannot have a teaching portfolio without the philosophy in there. If you leave today and you decide I'm not going to do a portfolio, fine, but you've got to do the philosophy. Got to do that work. It is the most important piece. It's the glue that pulls everything together. So in this case, I have, if you're going to have all this material from other people, reflections, descriptions, everything goes back to that teaching philosophy. Hang your hat on that. It's your thesis, and it is hard to write. Not even kidding. It's a hard thing to write. Yes?
I had to write my philosophy. Again, you constantly are revising it too. It doesn't change. It's not a static document. And it is really hard to write. So I suggest it's not the kind of thing you can write the night before. I mean, it takes a long time. A lot of mentors read it, feedback. I'm just saying, it took me a lot of work to write it again and to revise it again, and I've had it for a while. So, yes.
And you're a writer. Yes. Excellent. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Just reinforcing. It is painful. It's a hard process. One piece of advice I have for writing a philosophy is to write your anti-philosophy. Yeah. Write the thing you don't want to happen in your classroom, right? Write just get all that out. Like, I am not this kind of teacher. That will help you figure out what kind of teacher you are. Okay, so that's one strategy for starting this document. It's only 1 to 2 pages. But you have to pack a lot into it. Here's a few things. It may evolve and change throughout your career. Who you are as a teacher might not change, but how you do your job and how you think about it will. If you have a dramatic change in how you teach, I would say tell that story in your philosophy. That could be awesome. Philosophies have a way of becoming very generic. Oh, if I've read one, I've read 100. No, you want to find a way to stand out. You want to find a way to put your voice on it. So teaching philosophy, here's a few things to keep in mind. You do use I. It is very personal. It's very reflective. It is not a research document. You're not bringing in research. You're not quoting all those things that you learn in graduate school, how to do lit reviews. You don't do that here. Okay, this is about you and your interpretation. 1 to 2 pages, and I would really encourage you to stay at 1. Uses non-technical language, so you're not bringing in the lingo from your field. Okay, you're talking more general. Having said that, in the same breath, I'm going to say avoid generalities. Okay, so you don't want to be like, oh, I like to engage all my students. Well, who doesn't as a teacher? Okay, so you want to get more specific. You want to give specific examples when you can. So if you can say that so for me, okay, I like to reveal what I do in my classes for my students. So I would share an example of what that means to reveal and how I do that. If you're creative and your discipline encourages creativity, you might want to think about kicking it off with a quote or a cool story or something from your childhood or why you're a teacher or some great thing that happened to you in graduate school or in your postdoc position, and you might can wrap it around a story, make you stand out. And then the big thing is to be ready to share it in an interview. I can't tell you how many people are not prepared for that question. Tell us about your philosophy.
You can say something in a general way about, I believe in the importance of active learning, or, research has shown that active learning encourages student retention and stuff like that, but to never cite it, and only to be aware that what the research is in the background, should that question come up in the interview. So, no footnotes, no citations, but general knowledge the writer should possess about backing up their statement with some sort of support from the field. What do you think of that?
Yes. Absolutely. It's a great question. So while this document doesn't include citations, you need to be able in your interview to back it up. They may very well say, oh, you had a great philosophy. I'm curious about the research you said about active learning increases motivation. Can you tell me more about where you've learned that? You better be ready to answer that question. Okay? And you can answer that question by citing the literature, but you can also answer that question by what your CGL does for you. All these workshops. You can say, well, I went to 15 workshops, and this is what we've learned throughout. I mean, that's part of your story. But to be ready to back it up, absolutely. It just doesn't go in the documents, not a literature review. Okay, so 2 questions I have. So again, I read a couple hundred of these every year. And one of the first questions I ask is, if I read it and then I turn it upside down, could I tell somebody what I just read? If I can't at least pull out the goal or remember an example, they need to go back and rewrite. So that's a great self-test for you. Give it to a friend. They read it, they turn it over, and they say, oh, this is who you are as a teacher. Then you know you got it. You're on the right track. Okay, if they're like, I think you said something about retention, and okay, you got to go back and rewrite. So that's just a great little test for you to try with your philosophy. page. So somewhere early in your philosophy, position yourself or your discipline or what you teach in there. That's important. And it doesn't have to be, oh, well, I teach this course, this course, this course, and this course. No, just as a science educator, as a philosophy educator, as a teacher of writing, whatever, just position it, because that's part of your story. So you say, I use active learning in my class, I engage my students. So you say that. Well, how are you going to show me that? What? Maybe you could show me a lesson plan for how you outline your course and what students do. Maybe you have a hot topic, students come in, each student presents on hot topics and they engage in debates. Like, tell me what you do and then show me. So you got to tell me in your philosophy, then you got to show me. So we've talked about evidence. I want to talk about 3 kinds of evidence that should be in your portfolio. So Selden is an excellent resource for you, and I've given you the resource in your packet, the reference. But he talks about 3 types of evidence and triangulating your evidence, just like you would for any type of scholarly research project. You're doing the same thing for your portfolio. You should have 3 types of evidence in there. There should be materials from yourself, things you've written, things you've produced, assignments you've created, whatever. There should be evidence from students, so that student feedback that this group was talking about, or examples of grades, or writing that you've given comments on, anything that came from the students. And then there should also be information from others. People who are not in your class, maybe your advisor comes and observes your class and they fill out an observation form, or a peer observer comes in and they might be one of your colleagues sitting in this workshop that observes. So there's that other piece of evidence. It is too easy for a portfolio to be all about you and come from you. So this makes it, I guess, more balanced is the word. Okay, so you've got a little bit of evidence from lots of different resources.
When thinking about your goals, one of the things that we were discussing is your goals for an introductory course versus a higher level course are different, because in an introductory course, you're going to be trying to teach those basic concepts. You may not get the critical thinking, whereas in a higher level course, you may be able to pull in more where they can do the critical thinking and not have to teach those basic concepts. How, in your teaching philosophy, would you kind of focus more on going across, trying to do all types of classes, or focusing only on the introductory course or higher level course?
Great question. So I have 3 possible answers for you. Okay, it's lots of choice in portfolios and philosophies. 1, you can break it down. You can start with your overall who you are as a teacher, and you can say, when I approach my intro courses, this is what I'm trying to happen. You know, do my advanced courses, this is what I'm trying to happen, with this being my ultimate goal. So you can literally break it down. The second challenge that I have for you is to rethink how you're thinking about your intro courses. I would challenge you to try to bring those higher level critical thinking skills to your intro courses. Now that might be an opportunity for your teaching center to present a workshop for you on how you do that. How do you teach higher level critical thinking skills in intro courses? Because if I were a committee reviewer and you gave me a philosophy that talked about how you broke them down differently, my first question for you is going to be, why don't you do that in your intro course? So that's an opportunity for you to think about your own professional development and say, oh, let me rethink what I know about teaching. Okay. My third piece of advice for you, or option that you could do, is to abandon that altogether and not worry about course-specific things and think big picture. So there's 3 different options to think about. And that's the big thing here. Nothing that you write is right or wrong. Okay? I read so many philosophies, and I don't always agree with them. But that's not my place. My place is to just say, can you tell your best story? Okay? So it's your choice. Those are 3 options. Great question. Your portfolio should showcase your best work. Your best work as a teacher, your best work as an educator, so you should put out your best work. So a student sample would be one that you are proud of, that you can show that you made excellent comments on, or you could show a before and after. So paper number 1, I'm sorry I'm picking on papers, but let me just run with that for a second. Paper number 1 and paper number 2, and show your comments and how the student changed their work to get this A or whatever. That journey is what you want to tell. And it should be your best work. It could be a really not so good paper, but your contribution to it made the paper well. You know, made it an A or B or whatever. The second thing is go back to your goals and your philosophy. So if your philosophy is all about student growth and development and achievement, and most of the students who come in are really struggling with writing. I should pick a different thing. Are really struggling with math. Here's what I try to do to support that. Here's what happens. You can do that. It is supported in your philosophy. So there's two ways to look at that, but your portfolio should be your best work. Okay, your best work. It's an argument. It's a thesis. It's a statement. This is who I am as a teacher. This is why I'm good as a teacher. Teaching is many things. It's mentoring, it's advising, it's coaching, it's lecturing, it's interactive, it's answering questions. A teacher has many jobs. And you can absolutely include that as part of mentoring. And some people will even include mentoring as part of their teaching philosophy or advising. So that would be great evidence to show if that's part of your philosophy. And not everybody in this room is going to have that, but that's part of your story. Evidence from others, let's talk about that for a second. Main thing from others is usually 90% of the time someone who's observed your class. So if you don't have that opportunity, you want to create it. Okay, get somebody in your class to observe, fill out a rubric, write something. That's evidence from others. Okay, and it doesn't matter who, but obviously if it's your advisor, your mentor, department head, that's great. Higher the stakes. So the last piece of the philosophy, so the portfolio, you've been through your purpose, you know your context and what you're teaching, you're thinking about your goals for teaching, and again, a whole separate workshop on philosophies. We just skimmed the surface today. Thinking about what kind of evidence you want to put in your portfolio to make your case. Now you got to pull it all together. The last thing in a philosophy is your reflective summary. You got to pull everything together and make it easy for your reader to see the connections. So you might start to talk about, well, in my philosophy, these are my 3 goals. In my reflective summary, you can see here was my evidence for those 3 goals. This is how I achieved them. You might consider, what lessons have you learned about teaching while you've been at UNC Charlotte, for example. Or, what's next? Look to the future. This one is important for graduate students and postdocs just starting out, looking for that first position. What's next for you? This is your space to write about what courses would I teach or what do I want to do next. So your reflective summary pulls that all together. It's almost like the bookends. You kick it off with your context and who you are, your purpose, and then you end it with your reflective summary. And everything in the middle is your story. So my last visual for you is it is a fine balance in your portfolio. The portfolio and the philosophy is a fine balance between all of these things. It does have materials from you, but it's also materials from other people in your class and your students. It's general knowledge about teaching and learning and pedagogy, as well as what it takes to teach in your discipline. So coming to workshops through the CGL or through your faculty center or those sorts of things helps you find balance here. Too many people just write about how they teach math. That's not good enough. You've got to be able to write in general. And it's also personal and reflective. Everybody's story is different, but you back it up with data. So there's this balance that happens in a really effective portfolio. So I want to show you, and mind you, I know you cannot read this, but I just want to show you some examples. This is an online portfolio. All the ones I'm going to show you are online. But basically, you can see how this is a faculty member. He's a full professor. He divided it into philosophy, courses he teaches, methods he uses. Technology is a huge part of his teaching, so he started to play with that a little more. How he works on improving his teaching and assessing it. So he had all these different categories at the top, and he kicks it off with the purpose of his portfolio is to do X, Y, and Z. You always want to see that. And then finally, he moves into his philosophy. This is one example. This is neat when we're talking about data and evidence. He decided he was going to list the courses he normally teaches. Now, this is a full faculty member, so he's had a lot of teaching experience. And then number of times taught and the class size. Data. If you teach a small seminar course that's 10 people, but you also have the skills to teach a 200-person, I don't know if you'll have classes that big here, but 200, 250 people class, that might be really cool to show that you have that range in teaching. So he chose to do it this way. And he has links embedded in all of his examples, like his class poster sessions. All the links are threaded throughout. This is really neat. I have not seen this. This is the only professor that I've seen do this. He is really big on how he connects his learning, the goals of his course and how he chooses to teach and backing it up with evidence. So he literally set it up. Here's my course. Here's how I choose to teach it. Here's why I choose to teach it in the way I do. And here is all my evidence. An example of a paper, an example of a debate from student comments, student evaluations, a grant proposal he wrote, one form. Bam. Easy to see. Another example is the same faculty member. He chose to look at his student evaluations by just doing a snapshot of all the courses he's taught and when, and an overview of a running tally of student evals. He has a philosophy about student evaluations, which is a sidebar topic I'm not going to go into today, but he actually explains his philosophy down here below, how they're not valid. Another possibility here is he went to, this is neat, so he went to a writing and speaking in the curriculum workshop, and then these are the things he did to improve his teaching. So this is a nice way to package these professional development workshops you're going to, these teaching workshops, and showing how it improves your teaching. Now, I talked to our vice provost for faculty development a few years ago, and I asked her, what do you look for in a reappointment, promotion, and tenure dossier and a portfolio? So you're going up for tenure. What do you look for? She said, I don't care if a faculty member has been to 50 workshops on teaching and learning. If they haven't implemented anything from it, doesn't matter. So if you can't show how your teaching is changing by going to professional development workshops, it doesn't matter. So this is his way of showing that, how he changed his course. This is a graduate student. He chose to start his summary or his purpose by embedding things and just telling that story. And here he was doing some teaching with games, trying some new class assignments. And again, I just want to show you how he set it up. It's easy to navigate both in the narrative and on the sidebar. My final recommendations for you are to start early. So start yesterday. And collect as often as you can. It's easier to go back and purge things and pull them out than it is to recollect, like, oh, I should have asked my students last fall to fill out this form. Okay, you can't go back in time. So do it all the time. Be constant about it. You want to always be analyzing your data. No committee wants to look through 100 sheets of paper from people's classroom assessment technique. But if you can compile that, like we saw earlier, into a chart, a bar, diagram, something, then that's the way you want to present your data. You want to share your portfolio, and then the last one, I know graduate students, you're perfectionists, it's got to be right, I got to finish things. Your portfolio is never done, okay? It just sort of ends for that job or wherever you happen to be going next, but you're always working on it. So I have a purple folder in my office, and so I've given you a blue one today to start with, and I literally have it at the front of my filing cabinet. It's labeled portfolio, and anytime I do anything related to teaching, I stick it in there. And once a semester, I'll go in and be like, I don't really need that, yeah, I'll keep that. And once a year, I really do a full package of the portfolio. So whatever system works for you. I have colleagues who have boxes, but I've started you with a folder at least. So do you tailor your philosophy and your evidence and your portfolio to each of the different types of schools you're applying for? Okay, our perspective is that you do not. And here's why. And it's easy for me to stand up here and say it because I have a job and I'm not on the job market. Okay, I know. But if you put together materials to align with the needs of one type of institution, or two types of institutions, for example, then you're really adjusting yourself to fit them. And what you really want to be doing is finding your best fit based on who you already are and who you're becoming, okay? And again, I know that it's easy for me to say that now, but I can't tell you how many times I have heard graduate students and postdocs land in that first position, and then they come back to me a year later and say, I made a huge mistake. This is not what I was supposed to do, and they're on the tenure clock. So, they've wasted 1-2 years of their life in something they don't want to do. So I would say, be who you are in your portfolio, tell your story. Yes, in your cover letter, you're going to pull out things that relate. So we were using the example of Elon University. Elon is a huge university that does service learning. Well, they're not a huge campus. They are huge. Their initiative is service learning. And so if you're not talking about service learning, that might not be a good fit for you. But you might include that in your cover letter, but not change your whole portfolio if you don't believe in that. So that's just one example. But I know that that's hard to do with this job market. So, but that's my advice, is don't change it. So I want to thank you for coping with this environment. We didn't move around, didn't do a whole lot of sharing today, and we had to deal with technology, but you did a great job. I hope that this turns out to be an excellent online or audio-visual workshop for other people across campus. And thank you for participating. I hope that it wasn't too much lecture. I didn't get to do enough activity, but hopefully you were able to walk away and get started on your portfolio tonight or tomorrow if you wanted to. So thank you so much. You're a great group. Great group. Thank you. Thank you.